Self-healing of the mind. Nervous system dysregulation series, part 3. Holistically thinking, the mind self-heals, just like the body. I'm proposing that as one's body is designed to heal itself after suffering a trauma, so does the mind. Of course, just as with the body, one must create the right contexts for healing. It's essential to identify a physical wound, the source of the patient's pain, and it's just as essential to find the original mental wound as it is the source of mental pain, and therefore behaviours which are seen as acting out and not of the conscious free will of the patient. In today's world of collective understanding, it's become well known how integral the mind is to the functioning of the body, and vice versa. Indeed, the mechanistic model of parts and pieces has been rather knocked about in the last decade, as collectively we have come to understand how we can no longer separate ourselves into these segments. To understand an aspect of something, we must label. But once labelled, those aspects cannot be treated as an isolated part of the whole. This is a trap we must not fall into any longer. The left-brained world is having to admit it doesn't have, and alone cannot, perceive a complete picture. In the world of medicine and health, to find a solution for one aspect of a human being may very well disrupt many other aspects of the same. This is a sacrifice we have accepted for too long. It is the same in regard to the entire human, with a body, a mind full of pre-learned ideas, and a soul which will not change but will quietly wait its turn to have more agency in the physically manifest world. Let's journey into how the body tells the mind a story, and then we can look at the reverse, where the mind tells the body a story. How does the body speak, and to what, and why? The body has various methods of communicating to its mind via the brain. The mind is something we all know exists, and yet we only know this because the result of it being there can be tracked in the 3D world. This is only a conundrum if you don't acknowledge the unseen dimensions. The 4D is where the ideas are, and the mind is all about ideas. The brain is the processor of all the sensory data collected and delivered to it. It's the middleman between the 3D of the body and all physical things and the 4D of the mind, which has no physicality of its own. Imagine you're sitting at home in your recliner at 4:30 p.m. on a Friday afternoon. You've been doing physical work all week and your body is telling you a story. Which part of you is your body talking to? And who's listening? What might it be saying? How? And why? What signals are flying up your vagus nerve from your organs to your brain? How do you know you're hungry and tired? What are the hormonal signals? Are you a little wired, or have you been more wound up all week than you are now? Are you feeling tense? Is that in your body? How do you know you're tense and want to find a way to relax? Is that your muscles giving you an ache signal, or is it nerve pain that you're understanding is present? You're not quite comfortable trying to relax. How is it that you know that you need to visit the bathroom very shortly? Your body is constantly talking in its own way to the brain, which is organising these details for the mind. If it went silent, you wouldn't be able to make decisions, not even unconscious ones. Your body is full of senses. When the environment alters, the brain is told as much. The sensor sends a signal up to your brain via the vagus nerve, the information superhighway of the nervous system. It's clear to say we need this for our survival. If we're outside on a sunny day, we must be told about the temperature of our body. Might we need shade, water, to stop and rest the body? How would we caretake without the information? Would we be led into temptation by our excitable brain cells inspired by novelty and anticipated joy and fulfillment? This feedback system exists to keep the body running well so we can continue to do other higher functioning tasks. Now turn the tables on this system and imagine walking into a room full of angry, fired up people. What might the body feed back to the brain? What senses does the body have that will inform the mind to take note and perhaps make a decision based on that information? The human body has a multifaceted sensory system to inform the brain of threats in its environment. There are particular parts of the brain which are always on alert for our entire system. We have guards at the gate. In essence, walking into that room triggers a multisensory alarm system. External cues alert you to the anger. Internal body signals amplify the sense of threat. And proprioceptive feedback shapes how your body physically responds. This is why the vibe feels so immediate and visceral. It's your brain and body working together to keep you safe in social contexts. What you do with that information will be according to what you have learned over time and at certain times in your personal history. It would never be advisable to not have these alarm systems on. Without information, the brain cannot give the mind full awareness. Yet the alarm system is only the first part of the issue. What we have learned to do with those alarm signals is another story. We've looked at the brain cells a tiny bit when we spoke about them being alert for possible danger. The senses in the body feed back to those brain cells, and that's how the mind is informed. Yet our brain has far more brain cells dedicated to different functions. It's fascinating how modern medicine has discovered the different cells and their functions, worth taking a look at if you're interested in the nuts and bolts of the brain. Now let's look at the storytelling the mind does to affect the body. Of course, the brain is the middleman again. The body must be thought of as the actor. The brain cells we're going to focus on now, conceptually, can be seen as playing the role of the director. The mind is more like the producer. The instructions for action are set forward by the brain. It will instruct electrically and hormonally, and in combination to coordinate complex behaviours. The electrical instructions are fast-acting impulses, and the hormonal instructions are slower-acting, but are sustained for different lengths of time. Often there are cascades of instruction and therefore involve many feedback loops to sustain the chain of instructions and actions in the body and also interrupt the chain. Let's skip the fine details. Let's look at how the mind gets the body to behave in a way which it has decided is needed. We must look at the two aspects of choice the mind makes. It involves the learned and the not yet learned. If a context is familiar, you will have learned choice set out in your mind. Many have called this subconscious. I like to see it as learned choices. Once upon a time, you learned to make a choice, and then you have kept making that same choice, and you have not ever really looked at the choice, you just have defaulted to your learned choice. In a way, you've swapped your free will choice for convenience. Once automated, you don't have to spend precious energy units on focusing on what choice to make. It seems there is a concept which has been observed regarding decision fatigue. Each person will have a threshold for making good decisions in a day. Perhaps this is why people who work in professions where they must make considered decisions each day arrive home and don't want to make any more decisions. They will put up with whatever is served for dinner, yet on the weekends they are much more discerning about what they want to eat. Keeping this in mind, It's no wonder to me that generally a human mind will want to automate as many choice points and leave their energy for new contexts. Clearly, the mind wants to outsource as many decisions as is safe and convenient to do so. The rest that present as new contexts can have today's energy devoted to the processing of what to instruct the body to do. In an ideal world, we would also do auditing of the automated decisions. However, in a system where the allotment of energy each day seems limited and somewhat scarce, I can see why auditing is just put off to another time when important turns into urgent. When a person turns this corner from important to urgent, my job becomes quite necessary. Most people have no experience with this concept. Just as our politics makes more rules to combat the changing environment, we won't spend energy or time on going over all of the previous ones made. We don't understand how important doing this is. I do, though, hence why I'm writing about it. I understand that most people do not have time to do a full audit. So I have developed a way to do an audit that is specific to what is presenting as a problem. I have other articles which explain how I do this in more detail. The mind will instruct the brain will signal the body, and this turns into speech, physical action, etc. The mind will base those instructions on the learned choices, which have been installed over the experiences of your life. What if you learned via a hurt and you have a wound? Let's speak about the mind with the same vocabulary as we do the body. The body is attacked, it becomes hurt, it has a wound. To assist in its repair, we create a context for it to then heal itself as it is designed to do. Now let's insert the mind instead of the body and read that sentence again. The mind is attacked, it becomes hurt, it has a wound. To assist in its repair, we create a context for it to then heal itself as it is designed to do. We all understand the context to provide for physical healing. Well, we think we do. We understand as much as we wish to focus on, and modern medicine likes to continue to improve and innovate, so we learn more and more. Yet we ignore the mind. We ignore how the mind affects the healing of the body because we have not yet paid enough attention to how to allow the mind to heal. The mind is attacked. Let's dive into each part of those interesting statements. How might the mind be attacked? I can refer to my own circumstance to give you an example. At the age of 1 year old, my grandmother took over care for my infancy. My perfect mother, she was not perfect, but in the eyes of my family who remained, she was said to be a perfect angel. My perfect mother died and left a 1 year old, myself, and my brother was 3 years old. My brother was fought against as he tantrumed his way to 10 years old, and my grandmother told me, "Please, Joanna, don't cry." I understand why she did what she did. Her mind was telling her many stories, and this was a context she had been programmed to act in a certain way. It was enough that I was alive, and so she begged a baby to not cry. My mind was attacked by these words. A baby cries for many reasons, and I was told not to. I was told not to cry if my tummy hurts, if I needed a hug, if I was hungry, or just uncomfortable in any way. So my mind was attacked over and over as a natural action was coloured as bad enough to not do it. It becomes hurt. How does an attack on the mind cause a hurt? Perhaps think of the body for a moment. You're in the kitchen, you're using a knife, you stop paying close attention and the knife attacks your fingertip. Yes, you are no longer in your natural state of sealed skin. Your nerves are screaming at you, your eyes are feeding back, "We have blood," to your brain, etc. The mind is also often taken out of its natural state. As in the example above, I was trained to not cry. Remember, it was "Please, Joanna." So I was trained to be kind and compassionate and not do something to express my needs. This was not a natural state. I had been attacked and left with a hurt of perhaps guilt if I went against the wishes of the person who is supposed to care and therefore love me. It is the wound which hurts. It has a wound. So what is the wound I suffered? Let's see the hurt that happens in the moment of taking on that learning, and the wound as what remains beyond that time, festering because it's not attended to for its own self-healing. In my case, using the example again, the wound was to forever remain caring by being compliant to all that my caregivers said they needed. Whether the need was a true need or whether the caregiver was still providing care, I was entrained by the attack. I had integrated the learning and become hurt, and I was left with a learned choice, which took away any and all free will I'd had before the attack. Before we move into the ideas about self-healing and repair, take a minute to really sit with that last notion. A person is entrained by a mental attack and has free will removed from them. Most of us will know the phrase, "hurt people hurt people." Here I have shown you why. The mind is wounded by a mental attack, and while that wound remains unattended to, it will continue to insist on keeping its learned choice as a form of necessary protection. There is no more free will. Behaviour becomes triggered compulsions. The next article in the series will speak more on this. To assist in its repair, we create a context for it to then heal itself as it is designed to do. This is the part that people stop having familiarity with. So, slow down your reading here and try to find your own example so you can integrate it. The repair has the goal of allowing the healing, just like putting a broken arm in a splint. You don't want to live with a splint on your arm, but you'll arrange workarounds for the next 6 weeks that your arm bone needs stillness and protection from further attacks. We need to place the mind into a context that removes the threat. This enables self-healing. I understand that you might not have a reference for that. If you do have some experience with self-healing of the mind, you may have found an appropriate environment to provide enough of a sense of safety, signalling your brain to allow self-healing. Referencing my story as an example, it took a long time for me. I had no help. I had no faith in the modern system. I told myself my story and I listened. While I listened to my own complaining about my wound and how it hurt, I also allowed another part of myself to think about it from the points of view of all involved. I not only widened my perspective to be able to understand and forgive all of those people involved, I came to an understanding of the attack, the hurt, and the wound. I also developed a desire to bridge the gap between the state of having a triggerable wound, almost always festering and ready to give me feelings of guilt if I ever did anything that would be undesirable to anyone who loves or cares for me. I became ready to create the environment for healing. I can't explain to you how I found the environment within me. It is specific to who I am. I am very connected to the non-physical dimensions because of my mother being in them and my desire to remain connected to her. I wasn't always crying. I was actually very happy as a toddler. I found out later it was because I had not experienced the loss of my mother when my family did. That's another story for another time. I can tell you that I did have to let my own individuated, protective and angry ego, certain brain cells involved there, run out a puff. It involved a lot of angry yelling and screaming at the cupboard door in front of the edge of my bed. Then, after my ego ran out of things to say to my mother, I calmed down and listened. My mother held my hand, so to speak, and explained in compassionate frequency tones of how I can come back to balance. It was a truth which was not invested with any egoic thought. It was just as it was. It came direct from source and only came when my ego had run out of energy to fight back. Then I began to self-heal. It was only the beginning of my self-healing of long-held wounds. That was 2012. And now it's 2026. And I have a very refined method now. No more yelling and discharging the intense frustration. My ego spends most of its time twiddling its thumbs, not expecting to be needed. I'm in constant conversation with my mother. I stand at what I call the dimensional window, a frequency where we can both exist in our ways. She can't come into physicality as much as I can't leave it, yet she is there. This experience of going from the basics of learning to provide the context for my mind to self-heal enables me to help others in a manner not commonplace in our modern world. I do hope in the coming time I'm able to make it more common in the experience of others. I'd like to train people too to enable more self-healing of the mind. So the part that we are having trouble with in our modern way of living is twofold. The identification of the wound is needed in the process. You have to know which part of the body to splint. You have to know which learned choice to identify as the wound. The second part is the safe context for the mind to do its self-healing. This is the non-egoic truth and love which comes from the undifferentiated world and is processed through our right brain hemisphere, prefrontal lobe. When you know what attacked you, how it wounded you, and what the non-egoic truth is, in a safe environment of unconditional love, you'll be loved no matter what. Your mind will heal itself. It will rewire instantly. In my experience, clients only need 1 or 2 sleeps after that healing moment for their mind to rewire their brain. Indeed, it is reorganizing after the realization of that learned choice is no longer part of the whole program.
Hi, I'm Joanna Ruth from Tarot with JoannaRuth.Online. Hi, I'm Joanna Ruth, and this is your doorway to spiritual literacy. Why not come on in and learn some foundations together?